Welcome, everybody, to New Polity's Good Money podcast. I am joined today by the very interesting Mr. Alex Renn. Alex recently did the unthinkable. He committed the sin of greatest imprudence. He has defied the pieties of our modern age. He has closed down his 401k. Now, if you have been with us, you have probably heard Mark Barnes and I give some reasons why one might do this. Just to name some of those conclusions, here they are. The first is that we think that it orients people towards a false vision of what investing is for, not for the common good, but for one's private good. We think that it really has bad returns on people's investments for the most part, and certainly an adverse effect on their communities. We think that work primarily is a gift. We think that it is good, not ill. And so we should not be thinking about when we get to retire, but really preparing for the time when we cannot work anymore. Not when we don't want to work, but when we cannot work. And that we should treat work as a gift, a prelapsarian gift, a gift that God gave us before the fall. And lastly, we really want, well, maybe two more things. We really want people to get away from this understanding that being a burden on other people is not something bad, but a very, very much a design that God himself gave. And I think that's something that's on a lot of people's minds. When I get to retirement age, I don't want to be a burden on my kids. So go back to those podcasts before to listen to those arguments. The last thing that I might toss in there that may not have gotten into those arguments is that it's hard to extract your money once it's in a 401k, which actually limits one's ability, or in another sense, puts some brakes on giving away larger sums of money. So it stunts one from becoming more of a liberal, generous, or even a magnificent person. So we're kind of against them. But for all this theoretical stuff and for our kind of musings on these ideas, Alex Renn has up until this point been no talk and just all game. And now we've finally gotten him to talk a little bit. So Alex, tell us a little bit about what you did and why'd you do it?
So I guess to start out, I think the reason that I'm even here is because you never had a 401k. Mark never had a 401k. And so being able to say, well,
that's not true. I did have a retirement account. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I just closed it down when I was younger than you.
Got it. And so I feel like I can bring to the table sort of a different experience, a common experience of people who have been putting money in their 401k the way that you're supposed to, and the difficulty that poses. So, and then really the you guys have been talking about this for a while, and we get listener feedback, and I often get those initial contacts. And I forwarded one to you, and you responded and basically encouraged the guy to close down his 401k. And I was a bit uncomfortable with that. And I started to write an email back to you just directly that was like, dude, you can't go around telling people to close their 401ks. That's not okay. We're going to get in trouble. And I started point by point responding to the things that you had told him. And as I tried to write my responses, I've just read how lame they sounded. And I was rereading what you had said and sort of begrudgingly came to an agreement with you that man, this is actually, I think maybe you should tell people to close their 401ks. So that's why I'm here, right?
Well, but I know the story a little bit, so I'm just going to fill in a little gap. So you went from kind of the theoreticals on paper thinking, well, maybe this is a good idea, but then you got down to the practicals of it and you started to look at the numbers. And I think this is where it becomes really interesting and really compelling as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary too, though. So I think I think we need to be honest when we tell people like what we're advocating now. I
like that.
Is not the best way to get rich.
Nope.
Right. So we'll go through the number, but I at the same time, I think there's a lot of hope, and I think, we'll talk about.
No
it.
preface.
We'll
Following Christ makes you poor.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair enough premise.
Yeah. So basically, I wrote this email to you.
Yeah.
I started to write the email, and I realized it was silly, and I deleted it. And I realized I have 3 options. Well, really only 2 options. Option 1, stay in. It's just like, okay, I know it's wrong, but I'm going to keep putting money in my 401k. I'm going to keep getting money from my 401k. And I think that's sort of the standard. That's the control, right, that we compare to. Second option, freeze it and start saving. So instead of putting more money into the 401k, instead of letting my money be invested where I don't know where it's going, I want to just avoid the penalty of early withdrawal, stop it from earning anything, let it sit there, and start putting money into savings instead. That, I think, is better morally. It is monetarily just like crazy. It's terrible. I mean, the third option is to just get out, to pull all my money out of my 401k, take the hit. I had about 70,000 in there. I estimate, I mean, I'm crossing my fingers that I did my math wrong, but I think I'm going to get taxed about 22,000 of that, which leaves me around $50,000. So I'm losing whatever that is, 1/6 of my money. No, it's more than that. It's a third of that, almost a third, quarter. But I was in the lucky position where I was able to do that, take that $22,000 hit, immediately put it into my house, and by investing in my house, avoid $50,000 in interest. So right away, that transaction kind of had me come out on top. It's like, okay, I lost $20,000, but I just saved $50,000 in the long run.
Right. Well, you're comparing 2 different or only one long run in a certain case right here.
Yep.
So we'll get to that. So the
we'll
long run that you're comparing to is mortgage on your house. The other long run, which I think you're about to get to, is what would you have had in your 401k had you not touched it? Yeah.
Yep. So that was the kind of the initial barrier, is like, man, closing my 401k, pulling that money out, I just get taxed so hard, because you get taxed at whatever income bracket you're at. And when you're pulling that much money out of a 401k, you're probably jumping up an income bracket, and you're getting taxed an additional 10% as a penalty for accessing that 401k money early, which I think, which we'll come back to, right? Because part of the problem with a 401k is that I have this money, but I can't use my money. So anyway, so that was a big barrier for me. But even losing that, so then I started doing the math longer term, right? So now I start looking at what happens at age 60, right? Which is when I can actually touch my 401k. At age 60, which is only 2 years after I own my house, by the way. If I was just paying it and putting money in my 401k and like making ends meet.
Yep. Prior to New Polity, that's what would have happened.
Prior to New Polity, exactly. So the option A, staying in, making lots of money. This math is sort of creepy. My 401k at age 60 would have had about $666,000.
It was diabolical. It was.
I would have the house. I would have had the house for 2 years, owning the house, and I would have like $8,000 in savings, right? Because this is just looking at the money that's being paid into the 401k and the house right now. So ignoring all my other expenses and potential for saving, et cetera. So I just finished paying off the house, and then I get to put some of my house payments into a savings account. I've got about, $8,000. Freeze and save, option B, right? So don't pull it out, just leave it. Way worse because
I'm not going to correct the ills of my past. I'm just not going to commit them further ahead.
Exactly.
That's what the freeze and save is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's you're not committing them anymore.
Okay. Oh, so you've actually taken them out of the investments and they're just holding in the 401k.
They're just sitting there.
Yeah. Because, I mean, so can you talk to us just in the middle, kind of a disruption in the midst of all these numbers? Why was it that you did not want to invest in these companies anymore?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you guys say it better than I can in all the other podcasts, but it boiled down to just the realization that my money making money is not a right. At some point, I just accepted that it was the smart thing to do to invest. It was the smart thing to do to your money should work for you, right? And I'd never thought about the other end that you guys talk about frequently, right? So like, what am I investing in? What am I promoting in order to get that money for me? And is it the common good, or is it slave labor? Is it abortion? Is it pornography? I don't know. And so that's another, I mean, I think there's a fourth option that we're not discussing, which is if you can really control and focus your investment minutely and know exactly what companies are supporting and know those companies well enough to want to support them.
Like have a real profound conviction that they are actually helping the common good, saying, exactly, I must help that company. Yeah, if you do something like that.
But I can't do that. I just know myself. And I know when I started thinking about pulling the money out of my 401k, having a savings account that I could invest, I started to become aware of so many opportunities here, right? Like friends that want to start things. The opportunity, like my 5-year-old keeps telling me, I want to build with you, Dad. I want to build with you. And he's pretty good at swinging a hammer, but that's the extent of it right now. But I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but by the time he's 16, I can put a down payment on another house because I have that money instead of having it in a 401k where I can't touch it anyway for another 15 years.
Right. So maybe that brings us back to the numbers, but I appreciate the segue, because one other thing that came up in that is that if you have a 401k, it's that money's not yours. Like the system is designed that it might further help the market. So you are making a certain amount of money. Your employer is saying, yes, we can put that money over here. You yourself are putting money over here. But at that point, you're actually separating yourself from it and saying, sure, Amazon, Google, whatever company it might be, use my money, go for it, grow, expand. I'll take some of the interest back on that when I hit 60, but for now, that's yours. And part of the return, this last option C, is that, no, I actually want full control over my money again. But tell us where that lands you in comparison to A and B.
So really quick, just a comparison of A and B. 666,000 in my 401k. Option B, I've got a total between the 401k that hasn't been accruing interest for 30 years and the savings that I've slowly accrued. But I'm still paying off my house slowly, right? Because I didn't put that 401k money into my house. I've got a total of like 150,000, right? So that's a more than $500,000 hit. So that sucks. Option C, that we were talking about. Pull my money, $22,000 hit immediately, $50,000 savings immediately by putting it in my house. Then I pay off my house 13 years early. Is that right?
No, I think even earlier than that.
23 years early.
Yeah.
Did my math wrong?
Because you start, instead of putting money towards your 401k, you started to put that money towards your house
I
instead.
put the money toward my house. I took the money out of my 401k and paid that into my house.
Yep.
So now I'm paid off in like 5 years, 6 years.
That's awesome.
And so now I take that money, the 5% that should go into my 401k, the money that I pay on my mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
and I just start putting that into an account, right? I'm still living on the same amount I've always been living on.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of paying for my mortgage, I'm paying into an account that I can do anything with. It's still not great, right? I'm not getting my 6%, but by the time I'm 60, there's no money in my 401k because I closed it. I've owned my house for 21 years. And
25 years.
I don't know. It's around there. I'm a math minor. I'm not a math major. Okay. And I have about a little over $300,000 in savings in a bank account, theoretically, right?
If you didn't do anything with it.
This assumes a lot of simplicity. But just sitting there, $300,000,
Mm-hmm.
that's mine.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I think is most interesting about that, and again, right? Everyone remembers 666. So that's still, $350,000 just gone, poof.
Yeah.
We started off the episode saying you weren't going to get rich this way. But I think there's a lot of hope. And so I actually... This is so lame, but you guys can't see it. But I drew a little grid and kind of compared these options with some landmarks, right? So, I was reading the wrong line. That's why my 13 years was wrong. So 2026, I own my house with the last option. 2026 with the first option, I'm just like keeping my head down. It's like paying my 401k, paying my house, making ends meet. By the time my son turns 16, I mentioned this, I own my house and I have $70,000 in an account that I can do something with. That's a down payment on a house that I want to flip. That's the tools to start a business with him. That's a great college fund if we want to go that route. But I think the thing for me is the excitement of investing in a different way, right? So flipping a house with my son would be really fun. And there's no way I could do that. I would not have the expendable income if I was still trying to pay off my own house at that point. Right. And that's an opportunity. Okay, now I close that gap a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah, sure. The gap between the 300, option C and option A.
Option A, exactly.
300 and the
666.
number of the beast,
Yep. 2034 would be where I own the house in option B. That's the stop putting money in the 401k and pay the house off a little faster. By that point, option C, I have over $100,000 that I could do something with. Option A, I'm still just making ends meet. By the time I'm 50, $180,000. And by the time I finally would own my home in option A, 2047, I could own my home and have $300,000 of disposable income to do things with, to invest in my community, to help people start things, to build. You guys have talked about like having somewhere for build an extension on my house so I can have my parents move in.
Yeah.
Although by then, hopefully they're still healthy. Yeah.
But you could start that so much sooner too.
But you can start that so much sooner. And that's what I'm trying to point out, right? It's like by the time my 5-year-old is 16, I've got money that I can do things with.
Right.
As opposed to like still not even being able to see when I'll pay off my house.
Right. You got money for him, for your 2 other kids. I mean, we've talked about, your desire to start help your wife start a photography business, having money to instead of saying I have to put money in this corner over here, in this corner over here, saying I can buy $10,000 worth of camera equipment to help her get that off the ground. We have a friend who wants to start a screen printing company. Costs about the same. That is such a small CapEx. I mean, it is just amazing how little that costs to get a whole new company off the ground, which can become like a real boon for that person, even if it's part-time, even if it's whatever. There's a bit of productive property that they now own that you've helped them start and be able to achieve.
And the idea, like you say 10,000 is such a small amount. For me though, the idea of having $10,000 is like comical, right? Like I've never had that much expendable income.
Sure, I'm comparing that to 300,000 though.
Right,
I'm sorry.
exactly.
Yeah,
but that's the point, right? Is that I've never had $10,000, even though I had 70,000 in my 401k. I've never felt like I had $10,000.
Yeah,
but really,
huge.
I did, and I could, and I will now. So that's, I think, and then I think the last thing that I've been wrestling with a lot is just the different perspective that this calls for, right? Like at the end of the day, $350,000 is a lot of money to leave on the table. But I think that that's looking at it through the wrong lens, right? Like, am I really leaving it on the table? What's my right to that money? Like, everyone knows that if you were going to retire with $300,000, you should pay a bunch of companies to do whatever they want with your money so that you can have twice as much. And it's like that doesn't sit well with me anymore, because that's not the goal, right? Like graduating, retiring or dying with a ton of money is not what I want for my life, right? And that's the last kind of piece that I'm really excited about, is not only do I have opportunities when my son turns 16, we can flip a house and we can close the gap and now we have more money. Great, that's fine. But what's cooler is that we flip a house together, and I spend a chunk of time with my son, and I have the capital to do something significant with him, as opposed to, the grind, right? I still don't own my house. We can't do like, okay, maybe you can help me build a little wall in the bathroom. That's what he did last weekend. He moved those nails. But there's so many opportunities for like real connection, real community building that you can use that money for. And that should be the thing that we really want to do, right? It's not about how do I close the gap? How do I use this money now to make more money so that I can have money at the end of my life? Yeah. It's like, how can I use this money so that our community is better? Yeah. And the end of my life is awesome because of all the people that I've loved better. Yeah. We often remind people that Jesus didn't really like money all that much. There's not one time in the Gospels where he is seen to have it on him, to be touching it. There's not a single time where he even condones a purchase, a use of money. But the one time that he actually speaks semi-positively about it is when he tells us what money should be used for. And he says, make friends with the mammon of iniquity. So with money, what's the purpose of money according to Christ? It's to make friends. It's to do exactly what you're talking about. And to be able to have free access to your money instead of lending it for decades to Fortune 500 companies and the like. The real point is to have control over it, to actually have control over what you've rightfully earned, hopefully, and then to be able to engender real community, real love, real relationships of love with it. So I think it's just beautiful what you've done. I think it's really inspiring. And I hope that you will actually be able to build up this beautiful community and many others like you. Hope I don't live to regret it.
Yeah. Yeah. Jack comes back at you one day. It's like, I don't want to flip houses. What are you talking about, man? No, I think it'll be beautiful. Alex, thanks for this. You want to lead us, and end with anything else, or we'll sign off? We'll sign
I
off.
don't have any good jokes like Mark.
Yeah, he usually does have something great at the end, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you next time on New Polity. Do all the liberal things for us. Click the like button, click the share button. The liberals will love it, and then they'll be converted. Thanks, guys.